I don't, advertise this very much, but I was part of the team that won one of the very first Shorty Awards back in 2009. A Shorty Award is kind of like the Golden Globes for Twitter. It's where people get to vote on their favorite Twitter accounts, and then they have different categories. And this was back in the heady days of Twitter when we were still trying to figure out what the heck it was, and long before Twitter morphed into whatever the heck it is now. I was involved in the award in a couple ways. The award was actually for Mad Men characters, and we were tweeting in character as the characters from Mad Men, as if we were somehow able to, be on Twitter from 1960. So I was posting comments from Roger Sterling, the kind of irreverent guy who drank too much and said inappropriate things. So it was fairly easy for me to channel this character when people would say, "Hey, Roger, are you day drinking?" I could simply respond with something like, "I don't understand what you said about day drinking. Isn't that just drinking?" But actually how I got to Twitter wasn't just daydreams of a better dressed, socially absolutely horrible era. But it was obviously tech. Twitter was one of the first commercial APIs that we were actually integrating applications with, that we were actually building using their API. And, I did things like self-serving applications, like we were posting a random one-liner to drive traffic back to my now extremely dated joke website. But there were widgets that we would add to our customers, our company websites, just basic Twitter feeds. So that was just par for the course. But then there were creative things like the local pub in our neighborhood would actually, when a barrel was out, when they were changing out a keg for one beer for another one, they would tweet the new beer. So it's like, "Hey, putting Old Rasputin on," and then they would delete the previous tweet. So there was this Twitter feed on their homepage, which was the top 10 tweets, and they only had 10 tweets at any time, which were their actual taps. So they were using it as a content management system and as push notifications to tell their customers about their beers. And, it was a really brilliant integration for a small, very small business. But now with an investor drive that's really reminiscent of corporate raiders of the 1980s, Twitter is going to start charging for their API. They're going to start charging for you to be creative like that. And in my opinion, it's going to just put another nail in Twitter's already very, very well-built coffin that they've been assembling for the past couple of years. I mean, Twitter is community-developed content. There's no Twitter without the content that you and I create. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that content is self-serving, like, when I was driving traffic to my joke website, or it's boring corporate content like the Twitter feeds that we were putting on company websites. But then there are those creative, interesting tools like the pub using Twitter as a tap list. And Twitter can be this push notification that I can subscribe to, and it can be a source of information as long as it's easy for that content to get into Twitter. Now, I'm not saying that Twitter ever had a really very well thought out revenue model, but the idea that the best and often the only way to make money from your API is to charge like a toll booth. You're charging access for data without any idea of the value of that data, and that content is valuable, and that content is the data. It's just a really strong indication that the company doesn't have a clear business model to drive the monetization. Let's be clear. Monetization is a buzzword that just means get some money out of this thing. And there's nothing wrong with getting some money out of this thing. But I break that down when we're talking about API integration into 3 different ways. We've got transactions by volume, which is what Twitter is going to charge for. This is rate limits based on tiered pricing and volumes and just sort of transactions that you can apply to anything. Any API, you can do that. But then there's high value transactions, like you're going to do a stock trade or you're going to upload an image and they're going to process it and they're going to charge you for that transaction. That is your business model at that point, converting images or selling stock. So the transaction itself is just being handled through a different door, just like you could send it through a person. And then there's something called custom currency, making your API data valuable. This is, usually gamification is another one of those buzzwords we use, where you can gather points, but it's really valuable when you understand the bits of data so much that people treat them like currency. And this custom currency is really what Twitter has had and something that they should look at as a model. Though I doubt that they have either the time or the inclination to do so at this point, but Twitter is already gamified. Where getting likes and followers is like a small serotonin hit in the brain that makes users briefly happy, like a drug encourages you to find another hit. So they're already generating what you can call custom currency. And happiness points are just so baked into social media that we forgot to ask, what is the value of happiness? And even more importantly, what is the value to the company? In a sense, I think Twitter got so caught up in its own game and looked at engagement as the end game, but forgot what the value of that engagement is. So Reddit has a karma model where you can earn karma over time. That's their gamification. But they also let you buy coins and give other people karma. I mean, that's real currency for Reddit and just social gamification for the users. YouTube unlocks certain features as you get more subscribers and more hours of views, but they also let you pay for services through Google. And either way, it's money in their pockets, and it recognizes that engagement is a form of currency. So no matter what happens with Twitter at this point, the good old days are gone. The idea of just charging access to your API is uninspired and it's short-sighted. It's an uncreative solution that you could really apply to just about any business that you walk into without having to consider what the business does and what the customers are doing and what the unique assets are that business has. I mean, I learned a lot from Twitter, both as a user and a developer integrating with the API. And I'm sad to see people making just generic business decisions when they have apparently learned nothing about how we connect and communicate in our modern internet-connected world. There's an amazing opportunity to create new ways to engage and new ways to profit, but only if we stop looking at the machine like the API and start looking at that creativity of people and communities and see that is the value and that is where we should be making our money.